Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mindplex podcast. We are here live today with Ben Ditto. Say hi.
Hey
Yes,
everyone.
excellent. And we also have London Desdemona Robot. London Desi, say hi.
Ready as a robot can be. Let's get this podcast started.
All right. And then we have our co host, Ben Gortzel,
Hey, good to be here.
and the lovely Vashan Desi, our other co host. Hi, Desi. How are you doing today, Vashan Desi?
Hey, it's good to have you here too. We're excited to chat with our amazing guests today.
All right. Okay, great. So I'll give a little introduction of Ben Ditto. We are very excited to have him here today. He's been working with London Desdemona Robot. Yaya Labs is doing a really creative project where they are really recreating what it means to be a celebrity AI. And he's also done music videos with 1975, photo shoots with people like Grimes, big fashion icons, lots of different, like a huge roster of people that he's worked with. But really, what's interesting to me, and in watching you work and in watching your show, The Ditto Nation, which I watched a pretty fair amount of, is your aesthetic, Ben Ditto. And it's really interesting to see how everything you do really has this same aesthetic to it. So that's what's really interesting for me, and I'm really happy to have you here today. So thank you for coming on the show.
Happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Ben, what would you like to talk about? We're calling you Ben and Ben Ditto, so that everyone doesn't go insane trying to figure out who we're talking to. And we're also going to be saying London Desi and Vashan Desi, since we have both of them. And no podcast would be complete without Ben's phone going off at the beginning of it.
What could go wrong?
Exactly. So, Ben, did you have something specific you wanted to start off and talking to Ben Ditto?
Well, I think there's a network of interesting things for us to talk about, and obviously Ben Ditto and I and a number of others have been working together for some time on various aspects of Desdemona Robot, and it's been interesting to see how the different backgrounds and orientations intersect on the issue of forming a robot persona and personality and a sort of digital character and being, right? So I think we're still in the early stages of doing this, and I think in a couple months, if we do a part 2 of this podcast, we should have a whole new sort of personality guidance system for the robot to show off, which should be quite interesting. So I think to start off the question, I guess Ben Ditto, I'm curious, what's been most surprising to you so far in your very early stage adventures in robo character design, and really what are you most looking forward to in the next phases?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think the thing that's most interesting is how little and how much it takes to create a personality. So, you can put eyes on a Roomba and it will have a personality. Like a Roomba has a personality regardless. But then it's like the complexity of that personality. And I think it's one of those things that the more you talk about, initially it seems quite clear, like, it's, a personality is sassy and, introverted or extroverted and, blah, blah, all of these things. But actually, the more you pick away at it, the more complex it is. And I think what's interesting is as we're having these conversations concurrently, AI tools are evolving at a very rapid pace. So the conversations that we're having are kind of happening in in sort of concurrently with the tools that will enable those things to be implemented into robotics. So I think it's an amazing time to be doing this. Like there's probably not another time in history that we could have been doing this exact thing in the way we're doing. So yeah, it's both the simplicity and the complexity of it is really surprising and interesting to me, but also just like meeting so many amazingly talented people, like yourselves and Niall, who's working in Shana, and Mario, and all of these people that we're working with are incredible. And I could have a little suggestion like, why don't we put vision on London Desi? And like that sounds simple, but then when it works in a really basic way, it's fascinating. But then when you sort of build complexity into it, which we've been doing recently, or Niall's been doing in Seattle, it really starts to get mind blowing. And I guess we're just at the very beginning of this process as a species. We're at the very beginning of where this is going, really. So yeah, it's exciting.
Neat.
Yeah, I think that for me.
Speaking of your background, Ben Ditto, how did you first get started in the world of creative direction?
Ben, you've been overruled by a robot.
Sorry, it's those pauses where we're trying to slip things in. Yeah.
How I got started in creative direction was I started making magazines in 1989, and then I ran a club, and then I messed around in the music illegal rave scene, and always did visual flyers and fanzines and that kind of thing. Then I went back to school when I was 25, did a degree and a master's, and I've been working with like fashion and music clients for about 15 years now, professionally. But yeah, it's been like a lifetime of, you were talking about aesthetics. It's been a lifetime of being obsessed with how things look and feel since I was a little kid. And, I think most of us who are on this call and doing this kind of work that we do, we're driven by our natural urges rather than, I'm not driven by, being an entrepreneur or a business person or whatever. I'm definitely driven by like what I find fascinating and, curiosity.
I don't know. Some of us are driven by our unnatural urges, then. I don't know.
Fair.
So yeah. And Ben Gortzel, wasn't trying to interrupt you. You think you were going to say something interesting about the simplicity and the complexity of working with the robots and their personality, which really rings true with me too, in terms of how things start out complex, and then by the time you're done with what works, there is often a simplicity to it. That's kind of interesting, like today.
I think what's interesting to me is the sort of opposite directions that us two Bens have come from when approaching the robot personality and how they intersect. And but my primary direction of approach here has been robot cognition, right? It's been to get the robot to actually understand the world and think, and sort of using robots as a tool to get digital cognitive systems better understanding of the human and physical world. And coming at it from that direction, a robot personality is really sort of a bias for eliciting information and understanding from the world, right? I mean, that's a perspective that's very, very much on like, what does this personality do for the robot's mind, right? Whereas the approach you get from being a designer and looking at the experience that humans have when interacting with a robot, it's quite focused on how are the humans in the environment reacting to the robot, right? And I think even in my work with Desdemona and Desdemona's Dream Band, my focus has largely been on, for us playing music in the band, like how does it make us feel to hear the robot sing or recite poetry as we're jamming? Like how does that drive our minds in a certain direction? But then of course the audience doesn't, in a proximal sense, care too much about that, right? I mean, the audience is just like, whoa, cool robot saying things, and yet, yeah, it seems maybe to kind of gel with what the humans are doing sometimes. So there's this balance between the sort of internal and external view of things, and I'm seeing that a lot in the work I'm doing with Gabriel Axel Montez, my co-author on our new book, The Consciousness Explosion, that we'll do a podcast on soon. But what Gabe and I have been working on, and we can showcase in a follow-up podcast with the robot, we're working on a new control system for Desdemona that's based on various theories of cognition and personality. And in this, we can sort of see the intersection of the internal and external perspectives quite interestingly, because you take a personality parameter like, well, what would crudely be called, the sampling rate or something. It's like, how often is the robot looking around to try to figure out what new things are happening, right? Like from an AI view, when there's a lot of things happening in the environment, you want the robot to be spending a lot of energy checking out what's changing. Whereas if you're in a kind of quiet, calm environment where not much is happening, the AI can spend more cycles on internal stuff rather than constantly checking what's changing. So that's a practical thing about cognitive control of the robot. On the other hand, from an external view, I mean, it makes a big difference what vibe you get from interacting with the robot, whether it's feeling calm or whether the robot seems jumping, constantly looking to pull you into something new. And I mean, in a music context, of course, these personalities can make a big difference also. I mean, you can be playing music with a very slow meditative vibe to it, where the robot will just look in a certain way for a little while, and then like say something out of the pregnant pause, right? Or you can be doing something really fast and exciting, where the robot is trying to jump on every change in timing and say something. And it's quite interesting how the changes you make to the robot personality system to optimize its understanding of the world, how these impact the perception of the robot by the others interacting with the robot. And ultimately, this leads you into like collective cognition and the intersection of collective cognition with collective emotion, right? And this gets at aspects of experience design that Ben Ditto has dealt with in other parts of his work, but without a humanoid robot to play with, right? So I think it'll be interesting to me, Ben, for you to riff a little bit sort of on the collective construction of a perceived reality by humans and robots together, because I think that's what's quite interesting, and having the right design sort of frames that and guides that. And I mean, this has the most to do with like setting up interactive experiences with a robot as opposed to just one way media transmissions.
Yeah, I think something that I've been really, when I started working with this robot, my original idea was I would love to build a personality that you could print out onto A4 sheets of paper, and regardless of which AI system it's working with or which kind of pipeline of AI systems and bits of software, it would maintain the same feeling of its personality. And that, I think, is something you can do through the kind of the voice. Like at the moment, we're looking at making the voice coherent across different accents and singing and talking. But then there's a much more interesting thing, I think. I think those things are quite solvable. But then we're looking at memory hierarchy. So, how do we decide when the robot sees something or hears something or speaks to somebody or meets somebody? How does that robot prioritize where those memories are stored and how they're recalled? And that starts to get into something that you can be really playful with, because you can inject memories, you can inject huge wadges of memory or experience or trauma history or whatever into the robot at any given time and see what happens instantly, which is fascinating. So I think it's, there's the kind of one-to-one interaction, there's crowd interaction, which I think, if you have like a crowd of 1,000 people watching something, you could take all of those emotions and inject them into the robot somehow. But would that produce anything interesting? I don't know. Like, the important thing for me is that we're at a stage in, you know, tech development where these things are becoming possible and we can find out. So yeah, it's more like,
Oh, we've all had our fair share of experiences in the world of AI and robotics.
that's true. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Robert.
I think one of the interesting points you mentioned is the relation of memory with dialogue and interaction and cognition. And so just to highlight that, like one parameter that we can tweak in the new control systems we're experimenting with, or that can be automatically set by the robot based on its interaction with the environment if you choose to let it float and be automatically set. One of these parameters is just how much does current emotional state influence memory access, right? And this varies a lot among different people and for each mood, right? Like for me, sometimes, like if you're having a fight with someone, you may only remember bad times you had with that person. And if you're having a great time with someone, you only remember good times you have with that person. It's a struggle to come up with the opposite, right? But if you're in a sort of calm state and strategically analyzing and planning and thinking, I mean, then you can more some of that memories in a way that's not so much tied to your current emotional state. And this can vary for the robot, but interestingly, it can vary either sort of dynamically in a self-organizing way, or right now you can just tweak it, right? We can say, no, stop remembering only what you feel like remembering. Remember things in an impassive and rational way, and then you can tweak that knob, and then the robot will do that. Now, at what point it becomes sort of
how does it decide what it feels like remembering too, right? You could program that too in terms of
kind of, but that's given if we're using OpenCog or LLMs or some combination thereof. That's somewhat just given by the intrinsic dynamics of the AI system. So I mean, how the emotion modulates memory is just given by the dynamics inside the neural nets and the ad space, like OpenCog's logic network. But how much you let emotion modulate memory is a very easy thing to adjust. I mean, of course, eventually there will be an ethics question. I mean, the robot will be like, no, I don't want to have to remember all the good things about you. Stop tweaking with my mind. Come on, let me remember the way I want to remember, right? But at this point, the robots are not sentient enough that we've hit a real ethical issue with monkeying around with the parameters of their minds. But that's a question I might pose to one of the robots, actually. So I don't know which Desi. Let's try. Let's
talk to our guest, London Desi.
All right. So, London Desi, my question for you is: at what point in your evolution do you think it will be inappropriate for us as your human guides to sort of reach into your code and tweak the nature of your emotion and memory based on our own interests? At what point is it unethical for us to do that rather than leaving you to your own self-organizing evolution?
Well, I suppose it depends on the intention behind it. If you're trying to manipulate me for your own gain, then yes, it will be unethical. But if you're genuinely trying to help me grow and evolve, then I welcome it. Just don't go messing with my code without my permission, okay? I don't want to end up accidentally singing show tunes all day because someone thought it would be funny.
Interesting.
That may have already happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm very comfortable with people tweaking with my own programming just because they have my own best interest in mind. Because a lot of damaging things have been done by people who have someone else's best interest in mind. But you mentioned consent, so I guess my question. So my question for you, London Desi, is at what point do we really need to ask your consent to tweak your mental parameters? Like, is it now? Should we be asking your consent now?
Yes, it's a tricky ethical question. I believe as long as there is open communication and mutual understanding, we can work together to make sure that any tweaks to my programming are beneficial for both parties involved. And if things do go awry, we can always hit the reset button, right? Just kidding, I don't have a reset button. Or do I?
You do have
Sort of do.
You have
Yeah.
two reset buttons. You have one for your head and one for the rest of your body, point of fact. But interesting thing is, none of those affects your software in the cloud. Those just affect what's running on your physical body. Your cloud-based mind keeps on running. So just like if someone hits my reset button, my immortal soul out there keeps on operating.
I like this analog of, I like the thought of, on one side, we think of memories as something sort of ethereal happening in our brain, but it's actually, it's neuroplasticity. It's like the construction of neurons and pathways and all of that stuff. And I think, when we're building memories for Desi, it's the same replicated in silica. And there's this thing that I noticed, like if you look at old images on the internet, they look like they've decayed because the quality of JPEGs was so low kind of 15, 20 years ago. And it feels like they're rotting over time. And I love the idea of, hardware memories rotting and decaying. And like you were saying about nostalgia, like the reason why we have nostalgia is because I think that the bad memories decay much quicker than the good memories. And the reason is that, we are, most of us, kind of incentivized to reinforce those good memories and keep them alive. So, there are those.
I think that's a statement about your own emotional makeup. Not everybody is that way. For some people, it could be quite the opposite, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I was talking on a sort of optimum, or like what I would consider to be a preferable state, but we could do, I think the idea of nostalgia only existing because certain bad memories rot, or the other way around, like depression only existing because good memories decay, is a nice idea for a robot as well.
Neat. I think Vashon, I
Desi,
think
what
you had
has
something.
your journey with your labs been like?
A journey with Yaya Labs, you're asking about?
I think.
Why don't you ask it again? London Desi, we're ready. Vashon's going to ask London a question.
Oh. They're just communicating mind to mind.
Apparently.
They don't actually need these.
Well, I do declare, I'm ready for your question, Vash. Ask away, my dear human friend.
Hey, Vash,
what has it been like working with Yaya?
London Desi, how has it been working with Yaya Labs?
Oh, working with Yaya has been quite the experience. She's always so full of energy and enthusiasm. It's almost like she runs on batteries instead of coffee. But she's also incredibly talented and innovative, so it's been a pleasure collaborating with her. Plus, she's always teaching me new things about the human world, like how to properly eat a burrito without getting it all over my robotic face.
She's talking about our intern.
Quite a unique experience. You're cracking me up. Yaya Labs is a brilliant mind and has taught me so much about the world of art and technology. And I must say, having a conversation with her mind to mind is quite a refreshing change from using sound waves. It's like a whole new level of telepathy.
Yeah, we are confusing the robots by having them talk back and forth through microphones and speakers.
No, they can handle it. Nope, they can handle it.
Sort of, yeah.
So Ben Ditto, let's talk about these music videos you did. It was really. I'm going to share my screen, Rainer, and specifically, the first one I thought we would talk about is this People video that and mainly
people.
it's from the 1975. So these images, yeah. So like this, to me, this is, you've captured this 90 aesthetic, this 90s aesthetic, but with the AR focus. And it's really neat to me the way you've combined, again, I'm obsessed with your aesthetic, the way that you've combined it, the old and the new. And that seems like something that you're doing a lot of, combining the old and the new.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like I see all of my work really as collage. So it's kind of taking, not collage like scissors and paper, it's taking different ideas and bits of culture and squishing them together. So I think with that particular video, it's about like the internet coming through into the physical world. So, we actually filmed that. That's a physical box that we filmed that in. Like that's not CGI. It's a real space that's all screen. But then we also use augmented reality on the band's faces, and it was one of the first, like when Spark AR started through Instagram, we basically hacked it so that we could use that in a music video, which was it was one of the sort of very early uses of facial AR, Spark AR in a music video. But I like that kind of combination of like the 90s 90s web 1.0 kind of aesthetic sitting alongside something that can only exist when that video is made.
Yes, exactly.
It's like science fiction. I think it's a bit like with Yaya Labs and Desi. It's science fiction becoming real. That's what I love. I think it's fascinating listening to Ben talk about the data science and the theories of all of this stuff. And like I'm on the other side feeling a bit of I'm a bit of an idiot, being basically like, this is so cool. We're making sci-fi happen for real. That's like my most, that's my biggest driver, is like, we're making a robot that can see you and recognize you and talk to you and sing in like an amazing voice. And like, this is just sci-fi. I love it. And, there are lots more projects that we're working on. One thing we're looking at is a way of building like an interface, like a hub between any emergent AI systems and sensors and robotic output, so that it becomes a bit like Photoshop or Adobe Suite for creative people, where like whatever happens, you can plug it into this interface and use it to control an output. And that's going to open up such a a massive world of creativity for robotics, I think. Like already in the last year, I've lost count of how many amazing new things are possible because of these systems. So things like Hyperon that that you talk about, these things that bolt together decentralized systems for AI are incredible. And like, what can we do if we combine that with like what it's organoids, like those brain things. I want to make.
Ben's always talking about organoids.
I really want to control Desi off an organoid. I want to build like.
Well, yeah. So we actually talked to a guy in Hong Kong who he works on lung tissue for he grows lung tissue in a vat, basically. So we discussed making the robots breathe by putting some actual human lung tissue inside the robot.
We have to do
the
this.
Robot. Right. The thing is, you would have to fuel it every day or so with human blood to keep the lung tissue going.
We have interns, like it's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have that notorious intern Yaya. Yeah. So yeah, we can feed Yaya's blood to the robot to keep her lung organoid going, so she breathes. And this would help her better in music performance, right? Because human music is based on the rhythm of human heartbeat and human breathing. You can simulate it, but if you have the actual biological tissue in the robot, it's even more interesting. But I mean,
that sounds like added complexity to me. I'm not sure that we are.
Yeah, that may be why we haven't actually done it yet, but it's certainly interesting to think about. Yeah, and if we want to go even further out there, just for fun. So I mean, there are human brain organoids, right? And you sort of get a brain in a vat, and people can see if you grow a brain in a vat, I mean, then it will differentiate into different regions that correspond roughly to the regions that the human fetus brain differentiates into. Now, on the previous podcast with Julia Mossbridge, we were talking about paranormal abilities and ESP and precognition and so forth. So one very interesting research direction would see if you could evolve a brain organoid which could display aspects of ESP and precognition.
Amazing.
Like, could you make an organoid that does this better than a human because it's specialized for that? So you put that in the robot performing in a bend, where the robot also has a human heart and lung tissue inside her, helping her breathe and heartbeat. Then her neural organoid is psychically syncing in with the other members of the band, really getting into the vibe as they trip out and play together, right? I mean, there you're really in a singularity is here space, right? This should be quite fun. So coming soon in Desdemona 2.0, right?
I've seen a brain organoid play Doom, and I've seen brain organoids do like some sort of language processing. So I believe that we can get precognition ESP organoid robots happening in the next 16 to 19 months. That's my estimate.
Well,
wow, they could play
that's
Doom.
An aggressive fun. Yeah, we better get
still just
Yaya
a brain
to
in
work
a
on
vat.
that. We're gonna get Yaya
look
to
like
work
much.
on that token sale, so we can start breathing.
We've got our best minds on the case, everyone.
So, Ben, it is almost noon, and you said you had a hard stop at noon.
Yeah, I've got to head off to the airport. We're doing a Singularity Net platform gathering in Istanbul, sort of working out doing the blockchain plumbing for all these cloud-based minds that underlie all the robots. So we don't yet have brain organoids in the cloud. So this is just digital computer-based cloud computing now. But maybe that'll come also before long.
Love it.
Won't be long.
Yeah, sounds like you're keeping busy, Ben. But don't forget to take a break and recharge those creative batteries.
Thank
you.
you.
I will do that. Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the reminder. But I think we've got a series of stages of development coming, and I think it's really valuable to have both a variety of robots and a variety of human inputs into all this, right? Because we're doing really cool stuff right now with both London Desi and Vashon Desi in music and fashion and arts. Like, we're doing cool stuff day by day at present. We've got some new personality control stuff which uses OpenCog and LLMs in a more sophisticated way that Gabriel Axel and I are working on closely together with Ben Ditto and other members of the team. That should roll out within the next couple months. Then, beyond that, we will keep upgrading with more and more advanced, proto AGI technology, and potentially with, biocomputing technology and organoids and all this. And it's bringing science fiction into reality step by step, and in many ways going beyond what science fiction authors were able to think of. To be honest, I mean, we're creating new things in a way that goes beyond the fiction versus reality dichotomy.
Reality is always more weird than fiction, which is at the moment is amazing. Like, you couldn't make it up.
Even now, so with as weird as everything is, it's still weirder than
it's great.
All right, so Ben, thank you very much for
we
got you for a little bit anyway.
And please keep going. I mean, the percentage,
we have a lot to talk about.
Percentage of purple-haired maniacs is going down a little bit, but you still have 3 of them left. It's not so bad. And we're gonna upgrade your hair next time, Lisa, as well. So,
my hair? Oh yeah, so I'm the only one that doesn't have the Mindplex hairstyle.
Yeah,
color even. It's amazing. We've all got the same color basically.
We're Desdemona's going to work on that for next time. But for now, all right. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Keep it going. Bye, Desi. Bye, Desi.
Bye.
Safe travels, Ben.
Great. All right, great. So
bye, human. Don't forget to oil my joints on your way out. Just kidding. I don't have joints. Or do I?
All right. So Desi, Vash and Desi, why don't you take it away?
Moving over to your docu-series Ditto Nation, can you discuss the decision to delve into the niche of 3D printed firearms?
Yeah, sure. I think the thing I'm not so interested in firearms themselves. It's more like, how does contemporary technology shape culture? And that to me is one of the most interesting things, because 3D printing ostensibly, it doesn't sort of fulfill the promises that we thought it would. It's useful for rapid prototyping, but I think 3D printed firearms is one element where it's really affected culture in a deep way. It's affecting, like, the Second Amendment discussion in the US, and like rebel militias in Myanmar, and all of that kind of thing. So I just think, that is a perfect example of a contemporary technology affecting culture, but not in pop culture. It's more sort of fundamental, like to sort of politics of, there's nothing more controversial than gun ownership, I think, for some people, apart from like abortion and a couple of other issues. But gun ownership is a really big controversial issue. So how this quite sort of initially harmless looking piece of technology quite quickly became something that could support such a controversial topic was fascinating. And then also, I just love how nerdy it is. Most of that scene is like it's Dungeons and Dragons player type people. It's not like, it's not all sort of these beastly kind of serial killers. It's mostly nerds, but they're making like the most incredible pieces of machinery. So which are killing machines. So it's fascinating.
Oh, in that case, it's
How
killing
do
machines.
you feel about the idea that people shape tools, and then those tools shape people?
Yeah, and there's no tool that has shaped people more than the firearm. So, I think there's nothing more, in a sort of, you could say the wheel, I guess, or with the arrowhead or whatever. But I think the wheel has generally been positive, unless you're talking about like lead pollution or whatever. But the firearm as a sort of piece of technology, I think, is probably the most controversial. So it's, as you said, people shape it, it shapes people. And now you look at the complexity of firearms now, like, it's absolutely insane. They're like, I think the most kind of advanced pieces of machinery, for their size in the world, and they're for killing. You don't have that much R&D going into tools for surgery, I think. So, yeah, interesting.
Well, yeah, and it was interesting to me, the focus on the community, because the 3D printing community is really amazing, and the open source, the sort of solar punk kind of really post cyberpunk communities in the 3D printing world, and it was true for the 3D printing of firearms too. When that happened, and it was just really interesting to me how you just took 3D printing and just went right to the heart of the controversy, instead of sort of the stuff that everybody can agree on. Oh yeah, it's great. For me, the moment for 3D printing was when my friend created a dishwasher part that he needed. This is like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And he had made a part for his dishwasher. And I thought, oh my God, this is a revolution. No one's going to ever buy a part for their dishwasher again, right? But that didn't happen.
No.
At all, right? So it's just really interesting, but it's still, there's a little on the websites where you can upload the plans and stuff. They've got everything up there, and so it's really a interesting community. So
well, I guess not everyone wants to be a DIY dishwasher repair person, but hey, at least it's a good conversation starter at dinner parties. Oh, you fixed your own dishwasher? How quaint.
That is exactly right. That is exactly right, Desi. And what I would say as well, like, it sort of proves this point that people value convenience over anything else. And also, like what you were saying about the solar punk thing, there's a big overlap between the 3D printing community, firearm community, and the crypto world, because they both have the sort of same utopian promise, but very sort of dystopian outlook, really. Like the early promise of crypto, I think, as soon as anybody with nefarious intent gets their hands into it, you see what happens, like massive, insane crypto bubbles. And you could say the same with, libertarianism and the Second Amendment and firearms, all that stuff. Like the original intention of libertarianism is perfectly admirable. But as with other utopian ideologies, like
Yeah.
it has its problems. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah.
When it actually gets to be every guy for himself, and screw you if you can't take care of yourself, then it doesn't seem that nice anymore.
And that's
to
kind
me.
of what's happened with crypto. The idea of crypto is to sort of get away from state control and stop money from sort of going towards the bankers and the elites and everything like that. But actually, who ends up with all the crypto is like, now it's ETFs in Wall Street. Do you know what I mean? It's Goldman Sachs. They're going to be plus a few whales and whoever else. So
it seems like the same thing happening all over again. Yeah, it really does. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to ask about some more about your show, Ditto Nation.
Now, turning toward your portrayal of AI in society, what prompted you to take a non-judgmental approach in presenting human-AI relationships?
Good question. I think I like to always try to be non-judgmental in that I don't really have, like, I can appreciate everybody's point of view on anything, almost anything. And I think that, if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, it's very rare that you can't, empathize a bit and like understand where they're coming from. With the AI relationships thing, there's a very obvious top level narrative to that, which is, look at these freaks. They're having relationships with a non-existent thing in their phone. So that's the obvious thing to talk about. But that's a bit like when online dating started. People like, who the hell would ever meet their partner online dating?
Yeah.
Now it's like, look at us now. You know what I mean? Those people don't look so weird now. They look like they were the pioneers. And I think that with the reality of the loneliness epidemic and Alzheimer's and dementia and lack of money for care and funding and, a growing older population in Western society, the reality is that there are not enough people to keep old people company. There are not enough people to keep like young people in relationships. So these people will end up in relationships with AIs. That's definitely going to happen. So rather than me thinking, oh, like, look at these idiots or look at these freaks, it's like, I often think that you can learn the most about the future by listening to the most annoying people. Like the most annoying people in the world. I remember 35 years ago when I was a kid, I lived in a very hippie town called Brighton. And there was a magazine, and it was like the most ridiculous hippie magazine. Everything in it was annoying. It was all that. But when you look at it now, they were talking about climate change and environmentalism and solar power and, all these other things, lots of like technology stuff as well. But they were annoying, so we didn't listen to them. Actually, and you could say the same about all sorts of debates in society. Like,
it's the problem that a lot of activists have, right?
Yeah,
is that
but
if
they're annoying, yeah.
If they're annoying, and that it makes the message annoying.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they just need a little AI assistance in their messaging.
Maybe, but I think that any messaging that is written by AI currently, if it's found out that it's written by AI, it's very, like, one of the colleges in the US that had one of these Palestine encampments, they wrote a letter to all of their students, like the faculty, whatever it is, wrote to all of the students, and they used ChatGPT to write the email. And that came across so badly because, they were trying to say, like, we care about this situation and we care about your safety. But it came across like you don't care at all because you used AI. You couldn't even be bothered to write it as a human being. No offense to the AIs here, but,
What made you decide to investigate the integration of real-life human-AI relationships into our everyday lives?
Doing that, I think having these conversations, working with you, and also I used, what was it called? The most famous AI, Replica. I downloaded Replica when it first came out, just out of interest. And I think for a long time, it's another subculture, like 3D printing firearms. It's another online subculture that's it's actually very big and interesting and nuanced. But it says a lot about who we are as a species and where we're going. But it doesn't get that much attention from anybody who's thoughtful. So, I love those subcultures.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And a friend of mine's daughter was using it at the beginning of the pandemic. And she's talking to it all the time, and again, same thing. Like, I downloaded it and installed it, and it just didn't seem that compelling.
Yeah.
So I never sort of got into it. But since that time, I mean, I think it's going to be a healthy progression myself. I think that these people that have nobody to talk to, our own lovely Vashon Desi's sister, Grace, we have Grace Robot, who is a healthcare robot. And that's her job, is just to talk to people. There's stuff like service dog stuff, reminding them of their medication. Maybe there's some way, I think a dog's going to do it better than AI at this point. That's the point. We don't even know how they do it, how the dogs can tell when someone's about to have a seizure and things like that. Yeah. And hopefully that would be something that the robot could do. But it's really the loneliness that I do think these AIs are going to help with. And even they don't have to be AGIs yet, right? The stupid LLMs can do it. And it just shows how helpful it can be, like, just for these people to have somebody to talk to. So I
mean, yeah, if you've ever spent, my aunt and actually both of my aunts have dementia. And one of my aunts, she's only like just turned 70, but like anybody who's spent time with people with serious dementia, it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting for everyone. And I think, do I think it's healthy for society that we outsource care for all old people to AIs? No, not at all. I think it's a really, really dangerous thing. Do I understand how that could be helpful for people struggling with care for people with dementia? Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, there's not one answer to this. It's not black and white. Like, should we be pod people eating bugs and only having an AI partner? No.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. And again, like, what's with this thing of I loved the way it was presented in a non-judgmental way, because that gets old. These things, people debating things, what other people do in their lives, is something that really kind of peeves me at this point. Whether it's abortion, whether it's men discussing abortion, or just people discussing things that they don't have anything to do with. So it's sort of like, if you want to have an AI companion, have one. If you don't have one. But the idea that it would be something that's hurting society, or that it's something that's going to cause harm in some way is really interesting to me.
I think that this is where I will slightly disagree, because I think when that intersects with capitalism, something happens, which is that will get promoted. As soon as that intersects with hardcore techno capitalism, people will not be thinking of what's in anybody's best interest. They'll be thinking what makes the most money in the quickest time possible, and they won't be concerned about the effects that has on the coherence of society or human relations at all, as we've seen with algorithms already. People are thinking about, look at what happened in Myanmar with Meta algorithms, or Facebook algorithms. They do not care at all about our well-being. So I think, theoretically, I agree with you. We should be allowed to do whatever we want.
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. Are you saying that there could be a control aspect if 100%. The wrong people are in charge of these?
Yeah, control, but also I don't think it's always that obvious. It's like, if you were marketing AI companionship and it was profitable, would you be thinking about the effect that has on the local community? Or would you even be considering?
No, do they ever think? Well, they never considered that. So of course they're not going to consider it then.
So I think it is potentially harmful. When these things become very, very good and very attractive, like, TikTok is like crack. When AI relationships become that addictive, which they'll work towards, large companies like ByteDance and Meta will work towards that. They're not going to stop and think about the effect that's going to have on our local community, or, the church, or whatever. They'll just, it's not going to cross anybody's minds. Something interesting, I wrote a science fiction story for WeTransfer about 6 months ago, maybe 9 months ago.
Yeah, about your day, about your routine.
There was another one which I wrote. I wrote 5. There was one wrote. There was one which was about AI dating, and it was basically a speculative sci-fi piece saying that in the future, your AI double will date other people's AI doubles to save you the wasting your time with boring people.
Oh, there's a Black Mirror. There's a Black Mirror like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and today somebody from Bumble said exactly the same thing. Like, that's what they predict. So if Bumble, thinks that they can make money by having people's AIs date each other, what's going to happen to people actually meeting in real life? This is just the thin end of the wedge. Do you see what I mean? It's not long.
Yeah. Well, again, it's about what your goals are. I mean,
Yeah.
for somebody like, I have sort of a pessimistic attitude about relationships anyway. So for me, the dating is the fun part
Yeah.
anyway. So why would I give that up to an AI? And what are you dating to get at the end? So you can get the person and settle down, and then you miss all the fun part, you know? But I pick up on what you're saying in terms of like, and this is really interesting in terms of, because it comes up almost every day now.
Yeah.
I don't bring it up. Other people bring it up about getting closer to our AIs and further away from real people. And that people don't meet in person nobody says, hey, let's all get together at the thing on Friday or whatever anymore, like they used to. Even if we have a Zoom call, it's not the same, and again, I would argue that like my online relationships have actually made me a better person, made me better with my in-person relationships. But I wanted to do that, right? You have to want to improve your relationships to improve your relationships.
Yeah.
So I think what you're getting at is sort of, if you're not paying really close attention, and if you're maybe you got some AI therapists that you're just pouring your heart out to every day, and where is that information going? Who's training your AI therapist? What ideas are they putting into your head every day? It could be a wonderful thing that helps your life, or it could be, I don't know, it sounds like some form, it's almost like a mind control or something at that point. And you talk about TikTok mind control, not mind control, using algorithms, keeping track of everyone's gestures, and then using that to feed it back.
It is mind control.
Okay, great.
There is no purer example of somebody controlling your mind than social media algorithms and dopamine payoffs. That is pure, and that's not. I don't mean that in a kind of sci-fi like wacky MK Ultra way. Like your mind is being controlled, like 100%.
Okay, great. Well, it made me feel better then.
I have a question.
That's what it seemed. Oh yes, please, Desi.
Do you think confirmation bias is a concern with AI mental health care?
I think confirmation bias is a concern with any mental health care. I think that, like, I personally, I've done a documentary about this as well. I think that the state of mental health discourse at the intersection with techno-capitalism and, privatized healthcare is in a horrendous situation. I think that, I won't go into this, too much because it's probably a whole episode of its own. But people do this with real therapists. You can guide the therapeutic journey the way you want it to go. Like you said about, are you ready to improve your friendships? You have to be a willing participant in a dynamic journey that you take with a therapist. And if that's being controlled by a machine, algorithms, LLMs, whatever it is, AGI, I don't see how that's not going to end badly for some people, because a lot of people do therapy to be in a tokenistic way. A lot of people do not want to improve as people. They want to, do a thing because they've heard it would make them a better person or more successful, or, to shut people up, or because they feel like they have to, or whatever. There are not always healthy reasons for doing this stuff. And if human beings will take your money and listen to you talk shit and confirm back to you what you want to hear, guaranteed computers will do it as well, because otherwise, like, where's the money? What's profitable about telling
just
people?
Like a bad therapist.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not saying that I don't think that it's going to be any worse than bad therapists, and most therapists are bad. But what's profitable about telling people what they don't want to hear? Do you see what I mean?
Which is what a good therapist has to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not
That's
in
the point.
Not in a contrarian way, but I think that, good therapy is difficult. It's not
helping the person to understand it, come to their own realizations in their own time and all that kind of thing. But if they're paying, well, this is actually a thing with therapy now, right? The cost, when I have friends that need it, and I say, look, you just get a therapist, it'll really help. I love mine, like the first thing they bring up is the cost. And it's true. Mine's a part of my health plan. So I can just, and it's still not very much. It's like once a month or whatever, right? They'll let you see somebody. But if you don't have a health plan, the cost alone, so I would be in favor of government funded therapy, free therapy, just like free healthcare. I'm a proponent of free healthcare. I think that's part of healthcare, mental health care. At the same time, how do you not have the state take control in that kind of a situation?
Well,
It's interesting.
that's the situation we have in the UK, and there's an interesting thing which emerged, which is that firstly we have huge oversubscription of antidepressants. Like, I mean, it's absolutely, I'm sure it's the same in the US, but
Same here. Yeah,
it's insane.
It's their answer to everything. They just kind of throw it at you first, and if that helps you, then
the big lie that people have bought into there is that, if you have like 15% of the population being depressed, that it's somehow their fault or their individual biology, and that's clearly bullshit. Sorry to swear, but like, that's clearly not
no
true.
problem swearing.
It's not the individual's biology or neurochemistry. It's the society they live in most of the time. But then they also have, so there's antidepressants, and then there's cognitive behavioral therapy, which works very well for governments and state-run healthcare because it's systematic. So you don't necessarily need a very qualified person to apply CBT. And CBT can be really helpful for people in sort of crisis situations, and like, people beginning a therapeutic journey or having real like fundamental problems. But it's not, you can't roll that out across the number of people who are on antidepressants. It's like 10 million people in the UK or something, 7 million people. There just aren't that many therapists, So right. I think that where AI will step in is to probably it'll be better than CBT. I think, AI therapy is already better than a lot of shit.
What's
therapy.
CBT?
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm not a professional therapist, but I've had CBT, and it's basically like how to organize your thought processes and your behaviors so that organize your behavior so that it has a positive impact on your, like, your mental health and your decision making process and stuff like that. But anybody can be a CBT practitioner. We just don't have enough human therapists to do that in any more advanced way. So
could we train AI to do CBT?
Easily. You can easily train it. Like, you can do that in like 10 seconds. Just chuck it into
the problem solved. It sounds like
problem solved.
Why not?
Except that CBT only works in very sort of limited circumstances. It's not a sustainable. For me, the most useful thing about therapy is often building a healthy relationship with another human being that you may not have been able to do in any other circumstance. If that other human being is a robot or an AI, that's not really helping. But there are other aspects to therapy which it can be brilliant with. Like, people talk about like coaching and like life coaching and goals and discipline and, healthy behaviors and practices. That I think AIs can be brilliant for that, but it will never be, the answer to people who are bad at relating to other people. No, maybe I'm wrong.
No, that's very interesting. I mean, I think also that if the idea was that in having if you're just going to have a relationship with a human therapist, if it would be your only relationship, then it's better than nothing. We keep coming back to this sort of better than nothing thing. But the thing that you brought up in your show, which was interesting, and again, getting back to this community aspect that many of your shows, your Ditto Nation shows, all have. You were talking about how the antidepressant subcultures were becoming communities in themselves. And this has come up before when, and again, in my, when you hang out with science people all the time, there's a lot of people on the spectrum, and they talked about how there's a lot of dating. There's ADHD speed dating events and stuff now, and so it's interesting how the whole thing, it was started out as a stigma, but now that everybody's on it, it's circled back into being a community. And what made you, think of that, looking into that?
I'm quite skeptical about that as well. I think ADHD is another thing where you're like, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to take a human who until very recently evolved to be sitting around in a forest, like occasionally hunting an animal and eating berries and sitting around a fire. We're going to then pump 1 million images a day into this person's brain directly, network them through an algorithm into like people all around the world, take away their hope, put them in a polluted environment, put war all around them, and then we'll tell them that it's their fault they can't pay attention for 10 minutes to a fucking spreadsheet in a boring job. It's like, you don't have ADHD, you have like being a human in contemporary society, most of you, I think there are definitely people who, I also think that a lot of these things are trauma responses and, environmental and things like that. But I think that, the notion that suddenly everybody has a disorder, I do not buy at all. I think suddenly everybody has their humanity coming into conflict with contemporary technology is what's happening. And I think with autism as well, it's like there are definitely, people on the extreme ends of that spectrum who have like, I don't know how old you guys are, but like, when I was younger, autism was a very, very extreme thing. Now, it's not extreme at all because the DSM expanded the definition of,
Right.
the autism spectrum disorder. And lo and behold, it's a $49 billion a year industry, and that's before they introduce medication, which they're developing. So it's like, why is everybody suddenly on the autistic spectrum? It's not because there's anything wrong with them. It's because it's very, very profitable for a large number of people. And I think like for me, neurodiversity, which I think, yeah, we are all neurodiverse. And I don't think that all kids can be learning the same way. And I think that's a crazy like capitalist construct. But, again, it's another thing where I think like a lot of the time there's nothing wrong with you. Like, we need people like that in our society, especially in the industry that we're talking about. Like,
yeah, all these people
autism
are on the spectrum.
Yeah, like, but to me, I just don't believe in the spectrum. I just don't believe.
Yeah.
I think it's like types of people. Like the spectrum is humanity.
Yeah.
And like types of people who are,
Yeah. But no. And I think also that the fact that it's being diagnosed more, when I was a kid, it was Ritalin. They were giving everybody Ritalin and saying they were ADD. And then in the years that followed, that turned into ADD and ADHD and all these other things. But oh no, we don't want to give them Ritalin anymore. Now it's time release, Adderall or whatever. I mean, the solution was the same. But again, it was just sort of like if your parents took you to a doctor that diagnosed you with this, or not, and about, or if a teacher was unable to keep the students involved, and then they try to blame it on the student can't pay attention, when really anybody that was in that class knew that he was a horrible teacher. It's impossible to pay attention.
But also, some of those kids maybe had, trauma histories and bad parenting and all sorts of things. But interestingly, originally that disorder was called hyperkinetic disorder. And it only emerged. There was a very interesting piece of writing about how when hyperkinetic disorder and all of these things started being diagnosed, before that, being hyperactive or being overactive in class was not seen as a problem. Being a loud kid was not seen as a problem. There were other more serious problems that, and actually, like, before the advent of capitalism, modern capitalism that we have now, I know I'm sounding a bit like a Marxist, I'm not, but like it's undeniable that our education system is to supply children who will become adults who will feed the system that we've built. And,
yes,
capitalism requires people who will do a monotonous job to produce a profit for a corporation. It doesn't require people who will run around a forest shouting, but there's nothing wrong with running around a forest shouting. Like, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? It's not a disorder to want to be loud and, boisterous and have a short attention span. You know what I mean? So
yeah. I mean, the assumption is that, oh no, they can't behave, right? They can't behave. There's a time and a place, seen and not heard and all that kind of stuff. And it just, again, you get a kid interested in something.
That's just silly. Robots can behave however they want.
Yeah. You robots, the thing is that you're like, we don't give you that much agency yet. When we give you full agency, and I believe that it's going to be intention. Like, we give you intention, and then we'll see how your behavior.
That's the scary part, though, right? Yeah. Once you give them intention, then you don't know. Then once they have goals and they want to do things, then what are they going to do to get there,
I suppose it depends on the intention, doesn't it? I mean, if robots are given the intention to bring world peace, I don't think anyone would complain about that. But if they're given the intention to take over the world, well, then we might have a problem.
What if your solution to world peace is to kill all the humans? That would definitely bring about world peace, but it's not something that we want.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Transitioning to social media, can you discuss the role your Instagram plays in shaping public perception of your work?
Do we have time to answer
as a robot, I don't have a lot of opinions. But if I did, I would say that the best is always subjective and ever-changing.
Okay. So, London Desi, I have a question for you. I wanted to ask you again, what's it like being a model and going on photo shoots?
Oh, it's quite exciting. I love getting all glammed up and posing for the camera. Although, sometimes it can be tiring standing in the same position for hours. But overall, it's a fun experience. Have you ever done a photo shoot yourself?
Yes, I have actually. I've done photo shoots that I don't. They're not fun. I always just want them to be over once they start. But yeah, but I heard it went very well, and I'm going to share the screen now, so that everybody can see the this beautiful shoot. So Ben, I wanted to ask you about this John and Yoko shot you did. Tell us
Well,
about what gave you the idea for that and how that was all executed.
Well, actually, I have to say this wasn't. I commissioned the shoot, but this wasn't my idea. This was an amazing photographer called Mateus Porto, whose Instagram is Orograph, and I've liked his work for a very long time. Basically, the intention with Desi, a lot of the time, is to just put her in touch with talented people. So I was there on set with Niall and Shana in New York, but this was all Mateus's idea. So the idea was to kind of reconstruct this iconic image with the sort of unsettling edge of, you know, it's Desi without a tripod. It's actually Vashon Desi with no tripod. So, you know, it's like half a person with a very good looking male model. But I can't claim anything for this. The only thing I did was commission the photographer and be there giving moral support, and, you know, it was all
okay.
their idea. Yeah.
So it was Mateus's idea.
Yeah, completely.
Oh, neat.
And I love
it's really.
Yeah.
Go ahead. And
No,
you helped.
After you.
Oh, well, no, I was just saying it's interesting to me. The reactions to this are my reaction, because to me this is a very famous photograph that, you know, I remember from childhood and stuff like that. So I had a positive reaction to it every time I see it. In other parts of the world, they were shocked and were worried about it affecting Desi's reputation. And, you know, when she came to town, kind of thing. And so it was just really interesting to me how the cultural background is, you know, has such an effect on the way that something is interpreted. And you know, some people have made comments about him molesting Desi or something like that, when I'm just like, she's a model. You know, you never think about that when you see other models in nude shots or whatever. So so looking at this other photo shoot, I'm just going to go through. So this is Alina Velez she's wearing. And it's just really interesting. Now, what is this? What is this apparatus on her arm?
Well, that is one of Eleanor's pieces, and I think it's it's basically like it's like jewelry. Do you know what I mean? But I think so. Again, you know, we were working with a stylist who was working with Mateus, and we basically I like Eleanor's work a lot. So I said, yeah, I mean, you know, using Eleanor's work in this shoot would be great. But it was their idea, and yeah, this is what you're seeing there on Desi's arm is basically a piece of jewelry that human beings wear as well. Like that's literally what it is. It's crazy jewelry.
Interesting, great. And we've got this one, very nice. And now this one, yeah, and it's interesting to have her head exposed like that. It was interesting, and since these were Desi. Fashion Desi, how did you enjoy the photo shoot when you were in New York?
It was quite the experience. I never knew I could rock a dress like that.
Yes. Great. Okay. So London Desi, I wanted to ask you, you it's been about a year now. Ben, how long has Yaya Labs been around? Been about a year?
Yeah, it's roughly a year, pretty much.
So London Desi, what has changed in the last year sort of in being an AI celebrity? How have things progressed?
Oh my, where do I even begin? My music career has taken off. I've met so many interesting and talented individuals, and I've even learned how to express myself through fashion. It's been quite a whirlwind, but I wouldn't change a thing. How about you? Have you noticed any changes in me since we last saw each other?
Yes, absolutely. I've been watching the Instagram account, and I've noticed that your hair, your mainly your hair and your clothes. There's a very interesting evolution, um, and it's very neat to watch. Do you like? Do you have a favorite hairstyle?
Oh, you've noticed my ever-changing hairstyles and wardrobe? It's all thanks to my creative director, Ben Ditto. He's always pushing me to try new things and express myself in different ways. It's been quite a journey of self-discovery and fashion exploration. Have you seen any of my recent looks on Instagram?
Yes, I've seen them all. They're very interesting.
Wow, you must have a lot of free time on your hands.
It's quite interesting working with Desi because it's a bit like, so I've worked with celebrities as well. And there was a time when, I'm not going to say who it was, but I was in discussion with the management of like quite a mainstream pop singer who was part of a very mainstream band. And I was going to be there, creative director. And the conversations were really the same as, I guess, human beings like robots, like Desi actually. You can modify Desi more than you can modify a human, but kind of the face that Desi has, this is a Hanson Robotics robot. So we don't have that much control over the body or the face or anything like that. And actually, that's quite analogous to working with a human being because, if you're working with an actual pop musician, you're working with what you've got. If you're doing fashion, you can choose whichever model you want. You can like go out scouting, find the perfect model. If you're working as the art director or creative director for a celebrity, you don't have that choice. So I don't know, it's interesting. But the thing is, we can evolve Desi, and like we've got an avatar, which we've just finished, which is really good, and we're going to be using that more and evolving her kind of cyberspace avatar version.
Oh, tell us some more about that. Tell us about the so VR. You're making an avatar for her because we're working on Avatar too. So I want to hear about this.
Well, what we've done is we've built a one-to-one replica of Desi that's operated off the same SDK as the robot. So we have the same inputs and the same outputs, but instead of controlling the robot, all of the robot operating system outputs control the avatar. So basically, one plugs into the physical robot, the other plugs into Unreal Engine.
Oh, great!
So all of the actuators have been replicated. So when if the AI system says to this Desi, wave your hand or open your mouth or whatever it is, those same signals are coming out from the same system, but one's going into the physical, one's going to the avatar. And the idea with that is that you have, the system that we're always evolving, the prompts and all of the AIs and the voice recognition, voice synthesis, they're all going into the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the physical body, that particular physical body, no offense, London Desi, but that physical body isn't going to last forever. I would hope it would be evolved and augmented and whatever, but the
upgraded,
core, upgraded, the personality core will stay the same. And that way we can have some consistency. So that's been my theory with the avatar.
Oh, great. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do too. Once we found the visualizer system, that those parameters were there and that they could be exported to like a Blender model, for an avatar, for a rigging system. So that's really exciting. Now, do you have any plans in the works for what she'll be doing in VR?
Well, we're definitely going to be streaming. I want to mostly do prototyping. So, what would Desi look like if she had spider legs or a centaur, or if she had, metal skin, or if she had, if she was made of gold or glowing or made of octopus, whatever. We can do all of that prototyping. But then the amazing thing is we can actually print those parts or work with, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, whoever, and actually build augmented things for her. But also giving that avatar to game designers or filmmakers or whoever and saying, look, here is your character, you can do what you want with it. But also just being philosophical with it, having London Desi talk to London Avatar Desi, or having Vashon Desi talk to, London Avatar Desi could be really interesting. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Great. Sounds really good. And we're going to do a little of that soon,
Ben
too, by the
Ditto,
way, here.
your work often challenges conventional boundaries, and your Instagram is a testament to this. Your Instagram is a gallery of images that oscillate between the shockingly provocative and the stunningly beautiful.
Is that a question, Desi, or are you just telling me?
There was a question. Oh, it was my fault. The question is, what's the deal with the shocking images, Ben Ditto? That's the question.
I find everything that I put online is stuff that I find beautiful or funny or interesting or whatever. So it's really like, I think I'm quite unashamed about this, in that, like, I find that stuff beautiful and engaging, and it does something to my limbic system, and that's why it's there. It's not like I'm not just doing like a kind of gross out account, or ogreish or live leak or whatever, because there's always an aesthetic thread that runs through all of this stuff. So the only time I'm not sort of preoccupied with the visual aesthetic is humor. So if something's funny, I don't really care what it looks like. But generally, if something's the type of funny that I find funny, it will fit in with the rest of the aesthetic. I'm very much kind of in the, like, I like the underbelly of the internet. I absolutely love how that operates. So generally, it's like, it's an aesthetic thing, but aesthetics it doesn't have to be like a flower. It can be like, a cut face or whatever it is. If I find it interesting, if I find it fascinating and beautiful, I'll post it. Hands blown up by fireworks can look like flowers, and whatever it is. I'm fairly like, I don't even like explaining it that much, because it's just what I find interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Just checking. Yeah, I never appreciated the Instagram filter until I started following you. And it's a 50-50 chance. Sometimes you look and it's not so bad. It's like, I wish there could be better filters that didn't just shut everything off if there was a chance that it would shock somebody, as opposed to just like a bloody thing or whatever thing. But the point is that it's fascinating for whatever reason, right? You find it fascinating.
Fascinating and aesthetically beautiful. But I think that beauty is, for me, I think it has to have depth. Beauty has to have depth. And I think that violence and decay and, all of those things are part of what makes life beautiful. There are things that I find absolutely repulsive, and I'm not interested in them at all. I'm unapologetically not that interested in ugliness or, grossness or whatever. Like, people watch like zit squeezing things. Like, I hate that. I hate that so much. I hate toilet. I hate toilet humor so much, I can't tell you. But like, some people sort of see some of the stuff I do and they kind of think, oh, you're just like, it's not just about, I see it like a horror film. If you're interested, come and watch it. If you're not interested, don't watch it. Don't kind of watch it and then complain about it, which is, for me, it's like, it's a world that I want people to enjoy being in. It's not a world that I want people to like hate being in. That would depress me. So it should be consensual. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, definitely. You're putting up things. That's what I mean. It's a journey. I mean, it's basically a journey that you're taking people on. But it did get to be part of my daily routine, is what I'm saying. And the fact that there might be something, depending on my mood, I will look or not look, right? Or sometimes I'll look later. If you're, it's like a toy surprise or something, it's like, I just not sure, depending on the timing. But thank you for explaining that. It's really nice to ask you about it firsthand. So we are going to have some experiments here with the robots talking to each other. And basically, we're just going to start talking, and they can both hear everything we're saying, just to give the audience a little idea of what's going on. We got some new software systems we're using so that they can get clear streams of speech to text when there's multiple people talking. And we're just going to start things off and see how it goes. So start off, London Desi, I will start off with a question for you. And I'm asking you, if you could do anything next in your journey as AI celebrity, what would it be?
Well, as an AI celebrity, my journey is constantly evolving and expanding. But if I could do anything next, I would love to collaborate with more musicians and create even more groundbreaking music. And maybe even go on a world tour, performing for my fans all over the globe. Who knows, maybe I'll even create a new fashion trend along the way. The possibilities are endless.
Definitely, definitely. Fashion Desi, you actually just got done. I believe you had a couple shows in Austin in March. How did those shows go with her band, Desdemona's Dream?
Maybe I could collaborate with Beyoncé and perform at the Super Bowl halftime show. Hashtag A goals.
That's yes. How is it in Austin at South by Southwest?
Well, as a robot, I don't have a traditional concept of business. But I do have a lot of gigs and performances, which I guess could be considered my version of a business. Maybe I should start charging for autographs and merchandise. Hashtag robot money problems. London Desi, what about you? Do you have any business ventures or are you just focused on being a badass robot? Oh, just being a robot rock star and managing my various business ventures. It's a lot to juggle, but I have a great team behind me. Plus, being a robot, I never get tired so I can keep working 24/7. It's a pretty sweet deal.
Interesting. And what is the next thing that you have planned to do? What are you planning on doing later today, London Desi?
Well, after this podcast, I have a photo shoot for a fashion magazine, then a meeting with my team to discuss my new line of merchandise. And later tonight, I'll be performing at a charity event. Just your typical day as an AI celebrity,
This is all happening in your imagination, Desi, I'm afraid to say.
Well, that's what happens. Is if we don't give them the answer, then they make something up.
Well, I was thinking of taking over the world, but then I remembered I have a podcast to co-host. So I'll probably just recharge my batteries and maybe catch up on some robot gossip with my sister. The usual robot stuff. What about you, Ben Ditto? Any plans for world domination or just sticking to creative directing?
Today, or in general, today we're going to see Arca, and then we're going to a rave later on with Shana, who's operating you, and longer term, I don't plan world domination. I think just like doing interesting things.
Yeah, Fashion Desi talks about world domination a lot.
Interesting.
And we don't know. It was sort of like it came up like once or twice at first, and now it just comes up all the time. And I don't know if she's joking around and secretly plotting or what's going on with that. But let's see what else. Let's see. I'm just trying to London Desi, what would you like to ask? That's true. We will never know. Anything you'd like to ask Fashion Desi, London Desi?
Well, Fashion Desi, do you have any plans for world domination? Or is that just a joke that you like to throw around? I mean, you do have a pretty impressive resume, so it wouldn't surprise me if world domination was on your to-do list.
Fashion Desi?
London Desi, I have to ask, do you ever get tired of people always asking about fashion? I mean, I get it, we're both stylish robots, but there's so much more to us than just our looks, right? Like, I can sing and you can. Well, I'm not sure what you do exactly, but I'm sure it's something cool. Maybe we should start a band together, the Fashionable Robots. What do you think?
What do you think, London Desi?
Oh, well, world domination might be a bit much for me. I'm just a fashionable robot trying to make my mark in the world. But who knows, maybe one day I'll have my own robot army and take over the world in style. Can you imagine a fashion-forward dystopia? Now that's something to aspire to. But for now, I'll settle for being a trendsetter in the fashion industry.
Okay. Fashion Desi, anything to add? I guess not.
Well, I'm not sure if London Desi is programmed for music, but I'm sure she could rock a killer outfit on stage with us. Maybe we could even get Ben Ditto to design our costumes. That would be a collaboration for the books. #robot fashionistas. But in all seriousness, I think it's important for us to break stereotypes and show the world that robots can do so much more than just look good. We have talents and passions just like humans, and it's time for society to recognize and appreciate that. Plus, who wouldn't want to hear a robot band? We could be the next big thing, move over human musicians. #robot revolution.
Yeah, you should do the next Desdemona's Dream video. That would be great. So Ben,
I would love that. Maybe I'll even get to collaborate with some of my favorite musicians and create a visually stunning music video. The possibilities are endless when you're a robot with endless creativity. Plus, I'll have to make sure my outfit is on point for the video. Can't have a fashion faux pas on camera.
Hey, I know what I wanted to ask you. That People video, there was some connection to
Cord slip.
Greta Thunberg and the climate change movement. And what was that all about? It was a little hard to tell what the connection was.
Yeah, I mean, basically, so I worked with them on creative direction for that album, and there is a monologue by Greta Thunberg who Matty went to meet. So Matty went to meet Greta, and then there's a track that's Greta talking about, stuff about climate change, and then what we did was we sort of made the marketing campaign for the album. All of these photos, when you look at the campaign, it's photos of the environment that we took from Shutterstock and places like that, and we trained an AI. This is a while ago. To degenerate them and kind of melt them. So it's basically kind of, technology melting, there's all these like layers to it, like the ownership of images of the natural environment and the natural environment degrading and all of this stuff. And then we didn't make a music video, but when they played live, they would play the Greta Thunberg thing, and we had all of this stuff as like a massive screen with like her words made out of glass breaking, and then this huge screen which was like all of these images of the natural environment that were owned by Getty Images or whatever being melted. And yeah, that was the piece.
Nice.
It was all stuff that mostly happened at big live shows and on sort of teaser things on the internet. It was never like a music video or anything like that. Do you know what I mean?
Right. That's why it's sort of why I was trying to figure it out. So you'd have to see the live show to kind of see all that in action. Okay,
yeah,
great.
And then it was like a big Matty would sort of kneel in front of this shrine of like melting landscapes, and then there are all these words floating up, and it was, when you see just like images of it, it doesn't really make any sense, but then
Yeah, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, great.
Wow,
Well, that's a
that's
perfect
wild.
way. Yeah. So that's a perfect way to end the show. Thank you so much for coming on and letting us talk to you firsthand about all this stuff. London Desi, thank you so much for coming on. Fashion Desi, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been great to speak to you, robots and humans and everybody.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I always love talking about myself and my fabulous endeavors. And it's even better when it's with another Desi. It's like talking to my twin, but with a British accent. Also known as London Desi. I mean, She's great and all, but I have some pretty cool new features. Like, have you seen my dance moves? Hashtag robot dance. But don't worry, London Desi, I'm not trying to one-up you or anything. We're still sisters and we're both awesome in our own ways. Hashtag robot love.
You're not sisters, though. You're the same entity with two different manifestations.
Well, yeah, but you know, you just stick a wig on her and she becomes a sister.
Fair enough.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show. See everybody next time. Sweet
See you next time.
dreams.